I was a foot soldier in the No to Name Person campaign. I followed around the No to Name Person roadshows and handed out leaflets in various towns, and the public got it right away. They immediately saw it was a huge overreach by the state.
I'd been working with home educators, and we, as I always said, were first under the steamroller for all new policy initiatives. So colleagues and I had been following developments, and I was contacted by the Christian Institute, who had read our response to the original consultation and became part of the coalition that became No2NP campaign.
I heard about this thing called the named person. I was already concerned, to say the least, about the growing state involvement in family life. So I thought I would try and find every person who was against the named person and email them. And Liz Smith, Conservative MSP, had said, why don't we meet? And so she says, well, we could have a meeting at the Scottish Parliament. So I met at the Scottish Parliament, and there was probably about 10 people there. I'm assuming the Christian Institute were there, because out of that meeting, we then start to look at the possibility of trying to launch a campaign against the named person. And of course, the Christian Institute are brilliant at organising these sort of campaigns. So they then ran with that.
I really enjoyed campaigning around the issue. I, in my youth, was quite active in politics, but I hadn't spent time just stopping people on the street and talking to them. I've got particular memories of going with my daughter to Arbroath on a very cold and miserable day and asking people whether they knew about the named person. And you could see instinctively they knew straight away that there was a real problem.
At the time of the No to Name Person campaign, I was a Scottish officer for the Young ME Suffrage Trust. It was a really good campaign. It was kind of eclectic mix of people and organisations involved in it, and I think it was all the better for that. We maybe didn't agree on everything, but we agreed on the fact that named person was something that had to be stopped.
I helped to coordinate the campaign. It was a privilege to get to work alongside the brains of the campaign, the people who, like Leslie and Alison, for example, who were digging through the paperwork and finding all the ridiculous things that people were saying to try and justify the named person scheme. I mean, for example, one of the ways that they decided to promote the named person scheme was a publication where it said, in the lives of children, their parents are the gardener and the named person is the head gardener. And so that exactly expressed what we were saying, which was the state was imposing an official to tell parents how to parent their own children.
I was involved in organising the various public meetings that we held all over Scotland, and on the back of these public meetings we would generally have an action day, and we'd have an online petition. I think there was 37,000 signatures we got in the end simply from doing these action days. It was just wonderful to see as the campaign grew, it just seemed to unite parents all across Scotland.
I was approached by the Christian Institute because I had been quite vocal in the local papers about a survey to which I objected because it was asking quite intimate questions of primary school children and particularly senior school children. And presumably the Christian Institute had seen my face in local papers and thought that I was on the same page as them.
When I heard about the legislation that the SNP were trying to put forward, I found that abhorrent, that suddenly somebody was trying to take the child away from the parents and removing parental guidance within their own home. So I got invited to a seminar in East Kilbride, and from there it was really empowering to find out what was going on, and especially Leslie with her waterfall paper, which indicated over 300 risk indicators to remember for every child, which was just outrageous. People just did not know what was going on.
The key thing is that it's because Scottish people oppose the name person. So I spoke at some of the road shows, and I chaired some of the road shows where you just went out to places all around Scotland to try and talk to people about what the name person was.
I remember quite early on a BBC journalist interviewing the children's minister about the name person scheme, and he said, "Isn't there something slightly East German about all of this?" And there was.
The bits of the campaign that I always enjoy is when you meet these people and watch their jaws drop when you point out to them that actually they're authoritarian and their policies are driven by a profound distrust of ordinary people to be able to look after their own children. So yes, I enjoyed those bits.
I think one of my favourite memories was when we were in Brodie Ferry, that there was someone that travelled some distance to come in to see us, to sign the petition. That was hugely inspirational. The same action day, there was someone who was so on side with us that they said, "Can I volunteer now?" So they put on the sweatshirt and started handing out the literature there and then.
I distributed about 8,000 leaflets to people where it helped us take the case to the Supreme Court, which eventually we won.
In a sense, it was quite an easy campaign because people would just defend it by saying the most bizarre and ridiculous things.
There were just so many funny stories, from taxi drivers spying on children in the back of cars to the Gerfik Cluedo, where every parent was guilty. Everyone had done it, whether it was in the library or at home or wherever.
My number one personal favourite was the Kay Adams show. This was the first BBC interaction with the campaign, and it was a setup because they had a person from the No to Name Person campaign speaking first, and then they'd 3 people from the government, and they were going to demolish the No to Name Person case. And in between all of these speakers, the public was allowed to phone in, and it was glorious. Caller after caller attacked the named person legislation, and they did so with passion, and they did so with evidence and information, and nobody was phoning in to defend it. And it got so obviously one-sided in terms of the public response that Kay Adams and the BBC were appealing to people who supported the scheme to please call in.
I'll probably go to my favourite one really, which is the Supreme Court win in 2016. I think that the most important thing within the ruling was that the Scottish Government legislation was veering towards totalitarianism and going after the children first. And I think that's the most important thing that we did actually.
The really important thing behind it was the data gathering and sharing, which meant that nobody had any Article 8 privacy rights whatsoever. So it was good to see that in the judgment as being verging on totalitarian.
A few months later, the Herald newspaper held their Public Campaign of the Year awards, and to our astonishment, No to Name Person won the campaign, and here's the award to prove it. It showed that a grassroots campaign like No2NP really can change the minds of politicians, and it's a such credit to everyone that supported the campaign at whatever level. This award is a big thank you to everyone who helped in that way.
For more great content, like, subscribe and hit the notification bell.